Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go after the lefts, we go after the rights, we go after the middle and independents, we go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun. Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go after the lefts, we go after the rights, we go after the middle and independents, we go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything, and you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
Alright guys, today's date, September 18, 2021, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm host the most Will Buchanan. How the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. Before I do get started, we try to be a family-friendly podcast and try to watch your language. Sometimes words do fly, and sometimes videos may be too intense for young viewers, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So, I have to apologize if the sound in the background you hear is rain. Well, it's raining today. It's raining on this wonderful Saturday morning, so I guess we need it. So, let's go ahead and get into it. We hear a lot about boosters, and of course today is no exception, as Pfizer is starting to roll out plans for boosters to the COVID vaccine.
On set with more is Dr. Darian Sutton, an emergency room physician and an ABC News medical contributor. Dr. Sutton, we appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Walk us through this new Pfizer data. What do we learn from it? What does it show about the effectiveness over time?
So basically what we're looking at, it's kind of honestly mixed studies. We're seeing that there's a waning antibody response over time, and with that, they have the prediction that that might mean that people who have gotten vaccinated early on in this pandemic might be susceptible to infection. And so the goal is to protect against that. But the discussion tomorrow when we're reviewing this argument is not on if we need a vaccine, but honestly, it's really when is the best time. And so we'll see that review tomorrow, and I'm eagerly awaiting as well, not only for myself, but for my patients.
What is happening over the course of that, either 6 months or maybe we go longer, maybe we go shorter? Is it just your body's phasing out the antibodies? Is it killing them? What's happening actually in your body?
Great question. So over time, we have antibodies that have initially been produced when you get vaccinated, and the idea is that they slowly decrease over time. But to add to this important point, antibodies are not the only defense in our immune system. It's quite elaborate. There are many other different types of immune cells that help us to fight infection. And so although we see that antibodies are waning, as clinicians and scientists, we look at the reality of the situation, which is that vaccines are still proving effective. As of September 7th, the CDC has reported that of the 176 million people who have gotten vaccinated, only approximately 14,000 have sustained a breakthrough infection that has resulted in hospitalization or death. And so that shows us that the breakthrough infections that require significant intervention still continue to be rare.
Right. And these booster shots, it's the same vaccine, right, for Pfizer? It's exactly, okay, so yeah. I would assume the question isn't, do we know what this vaccine does? It's more so, is a problem giving a person too much of this vaccine? Are there worries about it?
Great question. So there's no reason to be concerned or sign that there might be a bad effect of getting an extra dose. But the question is, what is the benefit? What we know is that the Pfizer vaccine that is hopeful to be approved by Pfizer is going to be the identical vaccine that was given earlier. But Moderna has produced results that have a vaccine at half the volume has produced an appropriate antibody response. But that information has yet to be submitted to the FDA. So we'll focus on this Pfizer vaccine. Again, there's no reason to be concerned that it causes extra harm. But the question is, what is the exact benefit?
We've been kind of overwhelmingly spoiled in our access to the vaccine here compared to the rest of the world. Is there an argument to be made that it is slightly selfish of the United States to maybe roll out a third dose here before some countries don't even get access to their first dose?
That is honestly the most valid argument I think that stands. Vaccine equity is of utmost importance, as this is a global pandemic. And what we have seen in other countries is that when transmission runs wildly, it increases the risk of the development of a new variant, as we saw in India with the development of the Delta variant, and we saw recently in Colombia with the development of the Mu variant. We not only have an obligation to provide vaccines for providing safety for those who are at risk of harm, but also we have to make sure that we protect against future harm of variants that might ruin all of the hard work that we've done. I know that President Biden and the administration has promised millions of vaccines to other countries, and I hope that they continue to do that, because that's the only way we'll get through this pandemic.
So you wouldn't recommend, or not even based on your recommendation, people shouldn't feel ethically bad if this booster shot's approved and feel like, well, I shouldn't go get it because I want to save it for somewhere else. They should keep up their immunity.
I think that we can do two things at once, supplying vaccines that are needed to people within the United States, but also simultaneously providing vaccines that are needed in other countries.
Have we become so accustomed? I mean, I feel like we've had so many fast rollouts with this vaccine of approval and getting it out there, how we generated it and how it continues to be approved very quickly, that I feel like instinctively I'm sure they'll just approve it again for the booster shots. If you were a betting man, do you think that, I mean, I don't need me to put you on the spot, but do you think that this approval, we're just going to continue the boulevard of green lights with the vaccine?
I do think that an approval is very likely, but my question as a clinician, what are the recommendations from the CDC Advisory Committee that will meet next week on the 22nd to help give physicians like myself instruction on what is the best in terms of public health? And I think that it might not be an umbrella recommendation. I think it might focus on those who are high risk, meaning those who are elderly and those who are immune compromised or suppressed.
Interesting. So it's not a done deal yet.
Not a done deal just yet.
Definitely. Interesting. Dr. Darian Sutton, we appreciate your time as always.
Okay, so for all those that are wondering, yes, Pfizer is moving forward, at least trying to get FDA approval for the second booster shot. Keep in mind, guys, there is reports out there that because of the new variants, things of that nature, that a booster shot is being recommended. Keep in mind right now, Pfizer is the only FDA-approved COVID-19 vaccine, although Moderna and Johnson & Johnson are not too far off being FDA-approved themselves. But it does come down to the question of, do we need boosters? Considering the fact that cases are still increasing, and at the same time, you actually just have a lot of people who just don't want to get the vaccine. And I know I've covered it multiple times on this podcast. I've sat there and said, I honestly believe some folks just don't want to be told what to do. I personally do believe that. It's like, how is it that we're still in this day and age where you still have someone will still argue? Keep in mind, there was a video, and I meant to pull this up to tell you the stupidity of America sometimes, where seatbelts were being mandated, and there was opposition to that. And I wish I could pull it up very quickly so I could show you guys what I mean. But again, going back to vaccines, we're at this point now to where, why should we be telling folks? I mean, COVID can happen to anybody. I mean, I just found out that a good friend of mine just lost a family member to COVID-19. So, again, I don't know what it's going to take for you guys for it to hit home until it hits home. Get vaccinated. I mean, I'm so tired of hearing, well, I'm going to do my research. Let me tell you something. Unless you are a certified medical professional, doing your research on the internet does not make you certified. I'm just saying. Which the reason I'm going to bring that up, because there's a story very soon that we're going to cover. But I did want to cover this next story. Again, speaking of states that are not trying to push vaccines out, but they are wanting to have a different medical treatment, which is more expensive, but still not better than the vaccine.
Hospital admissions is at an all-time high for people under the age of 50. We did hit 1 million vaccine doses administered yesterday. That's good news, because that's the first time that has happened in nearly 2 months. Our lead national correspondent, David Begnaud, joins us from Scott, Louisiana. Many areas of that state are running out of ICU beds. David, good morning. Unfortunately, that's part of the story, too.
It is, Gail. Good morning, my friend. Listen, for the first time in 16 days, yesterday, they did not set a record here in Louisiana for COVID-19 hospitalizations, but they've still got 3,000 people hospitalized statewide with COVID. This morning, we want to tell you more about a fairly new treatment that doctors say has proven to be overwhelmingly effective at helping to keep COVID patients out of the hospital. Inside of those IV drips is a powerful weapon in the fight against COVID-19, monoclonal antibodies, lab-grown proteins that help the body target and eliminate COVID infection. According to Dr. Thomas Gillette, Chief Medical Officer at St. Francis Medical Center in Monroe, Louisiana, they have become the most effective therapy yet.
It's done a great job of helping high-risk patients stay out of the hospital.
The therapy is becoming more available at hospitals and clinics around the country, but it is only administered after infection, within 10 days of the first symptoms, and before those symptoms get too severe. What type of sickness do you usually say that's too sick to receive?
If they are having profound oxygen requirements, continued high-grade fevers, dehydration, since July the 1st, we've given about 1,700 doses.
One of those doses went to 42-year-old Scotty Johnson. We were there when he got his infusion 3 weeks ago in Monroe as COVID was attacking his body.
It feels like somebody's choking you. You start coughing, but nothing comes out.
This week, we followed up with him, and we met his wife, Meg. They both got the antibody treatments right around the same time.
I just really started feeling good about 3 or 4 days ago, probably. But I feel like I'm like 90% now.
While Scotty did not get the vaccine, Meg did.
My wife got the antibody treatment on Thursday. I tested positive on Friday. On Saturday, she was back up cleaning the house and doing dishes, and like it never even bothered her.
While the antibody treatments can be effective, they are not a substitute for vaccines, says CBS News medical contributor Dr. David Agus.
There's no question a vaccine is better than an antibody. But in the case where you're immune suppressed and you can't make a good response to a vaccine, they're lifesavers. So this is an important part of our arsenal, but it certainly is not the only weapon in our arsenal. Vaccines are the front line, no question about it, to fight a virus in today's world.
And that is something Johnson acknowledges he learned firsthand. Do you plan to get vaccinated?
Heck yes. Heck yes. My wife was vaccinated. I wasn't. She stayed sick for 2 days. I stayed sick for 10. And it was miserable. Absolutely miserable.
There you go, a first-hand account. Now listen, even with that antibody treatment, Scott said he felt terrible for 5 days. He said he couldn't sleep for 60 hours. So even with the treatment, it was everything he went through that led him to say, hey, listen, when I can get that vaccine, I'm going to get it. And, you know, lastly, I asked him, where did you get your information that led you to believe that maybe you shouldn't get vaccinated? And he said, social media. And I said, who were you listening to? And he said, not the doctors. But going forward, he says that's all he's listening to, the doctors.
Now, what's amazing about that story, guys, is that not only the fact of monoclonal treatments, which basically is antibody treatments, but 7 states, Alabama, Florida, Texas, Mississippi, Tennessee, Georgia, and Louisiana, are now upping their orders for this. Keep in mind, those very same states I just talked about, where the COVID transmission rates are exceptionally high, especially in Tennessee. Yay, our state is number one in something. That they're also actually making up for 70% of this monoclonal antibody treatment. This is not an inexpensive treatment. This is actually a very expensive treatment. And the fact of the matter is that 7 states where the transmission vectors are so high that they're requesting this in hospitals. Now, will this cause a shortage? More than likely, maybe. And it's a maybe on this because imagine if those same 7 states who have high transmission cases for COVID-19, imagine if the vaccination rates were high enough. We could probably eliminate what's going on in the South. But again, I just want to point that out because soul person, what happens when you ask them where they got the information from? I was guessing Fox News, which again is going to be the next story very soon. But he says social media. And I have been saying that this whole entire time. That every time I'm reminded why people don't follow certain things, I think about this, and this is showing my age, because for the people that remember Nirvana's Teen Smells Like Teen Spirit, when Kurt Cobain's line, and we're all just entertainers, and we're stupid, and we're contagious, social media, ladies and gentlemen, and social media is responsible for a lot of these people being so empowered to sit there and say, well, I'm not going to get the vaccine, and then as you just saw, with one individual, the moment you got COVID and you realized COVID was real and there was a chance you could die, oh, will you get the vaccine? Heck yeah. Yeah, heck yeah. I'm going to get the vaccine now. Yes, because you basically saw death at the door, was like, maybe I should have got the vaccine a long time ago when I wasn't sick. Happened, and like I said before, I have yet to find one person I have yet to find that has gotten sick, survived, and at the end of it all still said, I'm not getting the virus. I'm sorry, I'm not getting the vaccine. I have yet to hear a story like that, because I've yet to hear someone go, oh, well, I beat COVID-19. Are you going to get the virus? Are you going to get the vaccine? No. Everybody they've ever interviewed that has luckily survived COVID-19 without a vaccine, and they turn around and ask them, would you get the vaccine? It's always been yes. They even made family members who are on the same line with them get vaccines. It's the same story every time. So again, what's it going to take? But there's a reason why I keep mentioning social media, because right now there is a story out there, guys, and this is going to be rough, but Nicki Minaj decided that she was going to talk about COVID-19 in a way where a lot of people sat there and said, oh, this is going to make the news. Now, this is a Fox News article I'm doing from Facebook, so just bear with me on this. I know Fox News is not the shining beacon of journalism, but the story's sound. Just stick with me.
Have guessed that rapper Nicki Minaj would turn out to be one of the bravest people in the United States. A couple of days ago, we would guess, most people who watch the show may not have heard of Nicki Minaj. And then she tweeted about the COVID vaccine. She didn't come out against the vaccines. She merely said that as an adult and an American, she should decide whether or not to take the vaccine. Pray about it, she said. Don't be bullied. Things blew up from there. No praying about it. You must submit to being bullied. Those are the new rules. Nicki Minaj wasn't aware of that, and she resisted, and she's still resisting. It's a long and interesting story that has implications for all of us, and Trace Gallagher has agreed tonight to frame it for us, to set it up, to tell us what's going on. And here he is. Hey, Trace.
Hey, Tucker. The controversy stems from Nicki Minaj telling her fans she would only get the COVID vaccine once she did enough research, and she recommended her fans do the same. And here's the tweet most people focused on, quoting here, "My cousin in Trinidad won't get the vaccine because his friend got it and became impotent. His testicles became swollen. His friend was weeks away from getting married. Now the girl called off the wedding. So just pray on it and make sure you're comfortable with your decision, not bullied." Well, Tucker then talked about that tweet last night, and today Nicki Minaj retweeted this clip. Watch.
It's Nicki Minaj's cousin's friend's testicles who are swollen from taking the vax. That's the claim. But it's not anything to do with the physical effect of the vaccine that makes our political class mad. It's the last part of Nicki Minaj's tweet that enrages them. The part where she says you should pray on it, make the decision yourself like a free human being, and, quote, don't be bullied. So our media and public health officials didn't like this because they make their livings bullying people. So they couldn't let it stand.
Of course, the haters came out of the woodwork attacking Minaj, Tucker, and this show. Minaj was also criticized by MSNBC's Joy Reid. Watch that.
You have 22 million followers on Twitter. For you to use your platform to encourage our community to not protect themselves and save their lives, my God, sister, you could do better than that.
Minaj responded to Reid saying, quote, "This is what happens when you're so thirsty to down another black woman by the request of the white man that you didn't bother to read all of my tweets." Minaj went on to say she never told anyone not to get the shot, just to learn more about it. And she's right. She told her fans to wear a mask and to get the shot if they had to for work. But now she says she's in Twitter jail, writing in part, quoting again, "I'm in Twitter jail, y'all. They didn't like what I was saying over there on that block. Asking questions is okay. I like being effing dumb." Then boom, can't tweet. She also went on Instagram Live. Look.
People will turn their back on you, not agreeing. But people will isolate you if you simply speak and ask a question. Y'all don't see what the is happening? And I'm seeing black women on Twitter, black women I follow, acting like this is funny. Now, I ain't gonna lie, I had a lot of fun yesterday and a lot of laughs. But black women, are y'all forgetting there was a time not too long ago where you couldn't even make eye contact with people? And you're okay with what's happening? We're no longer even allowed to voice our opinions or to ask questions. Now, here's what's interesting. What's interesting is so many of your favorite artists feel this way, but they're afraid to speak up. And I can't blame them. Look at what they just did. I will never use Twitter again.
Finally, we should note that Twitter is denying Nicki Minaj was suspended. Tucker.
Trace Gallagher, thanks so much. So here's the point that she's making. Probably a lot of things Nicki Minaj says that you may not agree with. You may not like her music. But the 2 points she's making are worth reiterating. You can't allow people to force you to take drugs that you don't want or that you don't need. It's up to you what drugs you take, period. And if you allow people to force you to take drugs you don't want, you're done. They own you. You're no longer free, period. And the second point that she's made quite a bit today is that you have a constitutional right, a moral right, a God-given right to ask simple questions and expect answers, like you're an adult speaking to a fellow adult. And if you forfeit that right, you are no longer adult, you're no longer free, you're no longer a citizen, you're something much less than that. It's not complicated. Might be nice to have a few United States senators who are willing to say something like that and then stick to it.
Okay, first and foremost, thank you. I know it's Fox News. Thank you for riding this all out. I really thank you because it's Fox News. Again, thank you. I know it was, trust me, playing that clip at the same time having to watch all that, for all those that stuck around, thank you. Okay, so let's go ahead and cover this part here. First and foremost, Tucker Carlson has always been a douchebag. Nicki Minaj is dumb as hell, and at the same time, the hypocrisy of it all. Where, again, Nicki Minaj sat there and said because this all was about the Met Gala, she wouldn't go because the Met Gala requires a positive COVID-19 vaccination or the fact that you are not showing a negative test. She refused to do all this because she said that her cousin's friend in Trinidad got the vaccine and his testicles had swollen and basically became impotent. That sounds more like an STD than an actual issue because many doctors across the CDC and everybody else has sat there and said that, hey, it is not possible. There are no side effects to what they were explaining. However, a lot of doctors sat there and said he may need to go see a doctor because potentially he may have an STD. Anyway, Nicki Minaj used this as saying, well, I'm going to do more research and I'm going to pray about it that you guys should do all the same. Here's the thing that always bothers me whenever I hear I'm going to do more research. We are in a literal sea of digital information. We truly are. But it's amazing to me that you can have a device like this, a device that can do almost everything. You can order products from it. You can tweet. You can watch. You can play video games. There's no limit to what this device can do. That being said, it amazes me so that all the research out there, I have said it many a times, that you want to do research? Fine, let's do research. Let's go to Pfizer, let's go to Moderna, let's go to Johnson & Johnson, where all the vaccine information is there for the world to see. Go to the go to the CDC, go to the National Health Institute, go to Doctors Without Borders, go to the World Health Organization, go to NATO, go to any other place that's a reputable medical office or director or directive. You'll find one thing information. You'll find one thing in common with all these places. All the information is the same. Go to your medical professional. Trust me, doctors and nurses are more than willing to talk to you about the vaccine. But you'll find out one thing in common. They're all the same. the information's the same. They will all sit there and say in one unison that yes, you do need the vaccine. It would be highly recommended because you know what? There is no alternative to COVID-19. It is amazing. It is amazing to me when people say, well, I'm not going to get the shot. Okay, then what you going to do next? Because I've asked that question. I still ask that question out there. I still ask that question to everybody who says they're not going to get vaccinated. What's your alternative? Because, again, the world is moving on without you. The world is moving forward and will leave you behind. So Nikki using that dumbass excuse and then calling out Joy Reid, well, Joy had some words for Nikki, and I thought it would always be best to allow her to be able to speak about it because it needs to be said. So, Joy?
Hip-hop star Nicki Minaj tweeting about a friend of a cousin in Trinidad who allegedly had a negative reaction to a COVID vaccine that some folks pointed out sounded kind of like an STD. But I'm not a doctor, so I digress. Essentially, she made public her own vaccine deliberation, which, according to trusted friends, is a better way to describe vaccine hesitancy, which, by the way, is not the same thing as refusal. But by doing so, Nikki also used her social media platform and her 22 million Twitter followers to cast doubt on the vaccine to a heavily black audience. Needless to say, both my comments and her series of infuriated responses went viral. Clearly, Nikki was not amused, but that's okay. I feel like every moment is a teachable moment. And this might be the one that illustrates on Twitter in public how hard it is for us to talk to each other on these two sides of the get the vax, don't get the vax aisle. There's a lot of frustration and anger among those of us who feel like we've been doing the right things to try to end this damn virus, and those who are just plain not doing the things. And those who are not getting vaccinated are mad at us for excluding them from our spaces and in some cases from our lives. So there's a lot of anger out there. What disturbs me are those who care nothing about black communities and who are actually hostile to our interests. I'm talking white nationalist, curious Twitter bugs and chatterbugs like Tuckums and Marjorie Greene and Candace Owens, who leapt out to try to scoop up Nikki and put her on their team, using her vaccine misinformation to try to back up their own phony campaigns, pushing their base to reject the vaccines, while they're probably fully vaccinated themselves. These are the same Republicans and Republican talkers who've been working overtime to try to put vaccine refusal on black people's shoulders, to try to morph vaccine mandates into some airborne virus version of 1950s segregation, as if they would have opposed segregation if they'd been around back then. It's not only disingenuous, it's also anti-facts. The data is clear that it is Republicans, and more specifically Republicans who listen to Fox News and people like Tuckums and Margie and Candace, who are the majority of those refusing to be vaccinated. Black Americans are overwhelmingly Democrats, and we poll like Democrats when it comes to our willingness to get the vaccine. So we are not the problem. But that said, Nikki's tweets point out a very real thing. There is still a lot of vaccine hesitancy among black folks. Everything from just being reluctant or fear of potential side effects, all the way up to conspiracy theories about the vaccines that are causing people to refuse to take them or just delay. And that needs to be addressed. Let's be clear. There are good, solid reasons for black people to have these doubts. Our history in this country when it comes to the medical and medical research establishments are not good. And when we had a sociopath president in office who was manipulating the CDC and the FDA, pushing for a quickie vaccine by Election Day so that he could assure his own reelection, you could count me among the hesitant. Trump nearly broke the once trusted CDC and the FDA to the point where you couldn't be sure that you were hearing from the scientists and not just the political hacks when either agency spoke. And so, yeah, people like me were real hesitant. But luckily, there have been doctors and scientists who could reassure those of us who were willing to be reassured that the vaccines, once they came out months later, were indeed safe and had been produced without any Trumpist input, whether or not they came through the unfortunately named Operation Warp Speed. We didn't have to do our own research because we could literally talk with the black woman, Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett, who developed the Moderna vaccine, or with doctors on this very show who personally treat COVID patients and could assure us that the vaccines were safe. That's why I got vaccinated months ago, and my immediate family got vaccinated. And yes, I talked to my doctor, something that, by the way, lots of black folks who live in red southern states that have refused to expand Medicaid cannot do because they don't have a doctor. or regular contact with the medical establishment in their states until they get sick. Vaccine hesitancy in the Black community is a real and pressing issue. It's not something to fight about on Twitter. It's something to talk about.
I don't gotta say anything else. That said it all. That said it all. Joy Reid literally said it all. That yes, the vaccine hesitancy is not because of that. It's because of so many other things. And Nicki Minaj, again, is nothing more than a pop star, a failed pop star at that, that just chooses to use her social platform. I always find it amazing, honestly. I always find it amazing that these followers that have these 22 million and up people following them, you could actually ask them to do great things. You could do great things, and you choose not to. Or you say dumb stuff. Or you choose to do everything else. And this is why I stand and say it is amazing to me when it comes down to it, the level of just flat out, I'm just going to follow what Nicki Minaj says because she's making sense. No, you shouldn't at all. Just because the simple fact of the matter, it makes no sense. It doesn't. And the simple fact of the matter, guys, it helps when you do. It helps, and I say this ever so nicely. It does help to be informed. It does help to be informed. Really and truly, it does. But you don't get informed by simply following you don't get informed by following someone just because they're famous. Which again, it is amazing to me about Nicki Minaj anyway, just because simple fact of the matter. Correct me if I'm wrong, but all the plastic surgery you got wasn't FDA approved. But now that you're worried about getting a virus, just goes to show you. It just goes to show you the ignorance of it all. And at the same time, don't believe everybody at Fox News. They're just vaccinated. If you don't think there's not one there's not one unvaccinated person at Fox News, I got some beachfront property in Ohio I want to sell you. So again, understand that everybody you see that's talking about not getting the vaccine or hesitancy against the vaccine, chances are they've already been vaccinated. They just don't want you to get it. But moving right along, guys, I did want to go to the next part of the story, which again, it seems that even though I said going back to schools and, dropping remote learning was a really bad idea concerning the fact that, we closed down America for a little while. And now that we're opening back up, we don't want to roll backwards. So, again, with kids going back to school and the chance of COVID case becoming high, we've already seen it here in Nashville. And we're seeing it across the states that a lot of schools are trying to implement mask mandates. And it is amazing the number of parents that want to fight it for literally the dumbest reasons on earth.
You're abusive, off topic, obscene, or your comments are not relevant to the business of the board and the district, you may be asked to leave.
West Geauga Middle School in Ohio, home of the Wolverines. And tonight,
that's 5 minutes, thank you.
Home to the latest fiery school board meeting over the district's mask requirement for all students and staff.
This isn't about me. This is about we.
Every elected official needs to realize that you work for us. We don't work for you. These anti-maskers, they are not a majority in this community.
Masks are feckless. They serve no purpose relative to viral spread.
We're trying to give our kids as close to a normal school year as we can. We think that masks is one small price to pay for that.
Nightline went inside the latest battle in the COVID crisis. One state, two families with very different views on masking.
You can't tell me that the kid down the row from my daughter, who may or may not have COVID, that their choice to not wear a mask doesn't impact my kid, because it does.
When it comes to school, you don't think masks make a difference?
I don't think they make a difference, no.
The deafening debate raging. A small minority raising their voice against masks, while others try to drown them out.
The school doesn't own our bodies, the school doesn't own our kids, and the school doesn't own our rights.
We need masking. We need social distance. We need ventilation systems.
Our presence didn't go unnoticed.
Don't give them anything. They're not your friends. They're not our friends.
Guys, you're being extremely rude. Like,
Just
my God.
just everybody. Ohio is not alone. As millions of students return to in-person learning, to mask or not to mask is on top of the agenda.
Your children and your children's children will be subjugated! Hail Fauci! Hail Fauci!
You should be embarrassed and ashamed with the agenda that all of you are letting happening in this town.
Some states have even gone as far as banning local districts from enacting mandates.
You can't go above the law and take away people's rights. And that's what they're doing. They're taking away parents' rights.
There are a multitude of factors that are contributing to why we're seeing the rise in pediatric cases. They're back in school sports and school activities, seeing their friends that they haven't seen for months because they've been doing remote learning. It's a prime breeding ground for COVID.
Back in Ohio, Jonathan and Tiffany Broadbent were hoping this school year would be different for their two children after months of virtual learning.
It became very important to me to find a place where our kids could just heal from the isolation, the scariness, the loneliness, the upheaval. That's how I envisioned the school year for them, that they can start to heal from all of that.
Tell me how you guys have fared the past couple of years, especially from the beginning of the pandemic.
Well, it was scary at first. I have some heart issues. I was like super cautious, you know, and really worried about it. I'd seen some reports coming in. We masked, we did lots of, you know, all the mitigation things.
The Broadbent's perspective on COVID-19 has changed. They no longer mask unless they're required to. Just a week before school, the district announced a mask mandate for the first quarter.
That masking email, I have never seen her that mad. In 20 years, I've never seen my wife as mad as she was.
You want to put a mask on your kid, that's great, you do it. But don't mandate this for everyone else. It's a medical intervention, and the school board shouldn't be in between the parents and the students on this issue.
School Superintendent Rich Markward helped make that decision to require masks.
Nobody likes masks. I don't like wearing them. The kids don't like wearing them. It's just something that we feel as a community can add one more layer of precaution. We saw cases rising, and we assessed the information that we were receiving from the American Academy of Pediatrics, the Centers for Disease Control, and the various health departments.
The Broadbents filed and received an exemption for their kids from the mandate.
They just said, your exemption request will not be contested.
About 5% of the West Geauga student body have been granted an exemption for medical or religious reason.
In our case, the most popular choice seems to be a religious objection to masks. It is based on a verse in 2 Corinthians. It's chapter 3, verse 18, which speaks of believers with faces unveiled being transformed into the image of the Lord. And that is apparently, many of our families experienced some sort of religious conversion over the summer.
So you don't actually need a doctor's note?
No.
While some parents may fight to exempt their kids, the latest polling from the AP shows that nearly 60% of Americans support masking in school. Jonathan and Tiffany believe that mask wearing could harm their kids, something the medical community has disputed.
So we have everything from increased acne to upper respiratory infection to staph infections, nasal,
fungal infections.
Fungal infections. Yeah, so people are getting
and
sinus
social
infections
impacts.
And social impacts. Social impacts and early childhood development is another one we're just starting to discover.
A lot of the reasons that people are citing for not wanting to wear masks are just factually incorrect. Maybe masks can cause a little bit more acne. They definitely don't cause an increase in upper respiratory infections. A mask is not going to cause your child to lose their life, and a mask is not going to cause your child to wind up on a ventilator. COVID, however, will.
2 hours down the road from the Broadbents, Meredith Ripley is a mom of 3. 2 of her kids have special needs. Because of that, she supports mandatory masks.
For me, it is about caring more for others than myself. And I think that that's something that's important in my faith. That's something that, you know, Jesus taught, is to love others more than you love yourself. And so I think that that's where it comes from. And so my hope is that we could just look at common decency and just care more about our neighbor than ourselves. It's not.
When COVID began spreading across the country, Meredith worried about her little girl, 5-year-old Hannah.
For her, colds are a really big deal. Like when she was 1, she got RSV, which is a respiratory virus, and she was on a ventilator for 2.5 weeks and coded, and she was in the hospital for a total of 6 weeks after that. So respiratory viruses are a big deal in my house.
Hannah was born missing a lung and lives with the genetic condition called 22q.
So it's been quite the journey with her, but she is just the most delightful child. She's just super fun and just has the best little outlook on life.
Meredith's sons, Adam and Sam, participated in a hybrid program last year, doing virtual schooling part-time. Hannah went to a special needs preschool.
So virtual learning is really challenging when you have a child with special needs. My son with autism receives 500 minutes of instruction in reading, 300 in math, 250 in executive functioning, and 200 in writing. And those, as well as the occupational therapy that he receives, those are not effective over a virtual setting.
This year, she's grateful for her kids to be in the classroom full-time, to get the services they need. She sent them to school with masks, even though there was no mandate in place. Hannah was exposed to COVID and had to quarantine.
There was a lot of anxiety about that. And so she was exposed at lunch, and so we spent like 7 days watching for symptoms, and thankfully, by the grace of God, she didn't get COVID. I think as we've seen like Delta come out and be more pervasive, the effects on children have become more severe.
Meredith recently spoke up at her local school board meeting to demand a mask mandate.
For all the people who say, I can't breathe in a mask, or my kid can't breathe in a mask, like my daughter has 1 lung and a teeny tiny airway, and she has been wearing a mask every winter since she was 2. If she can breathe in a mask, so can you.
If Hannah can do it, your kids can too.
Yes.
All right, guys, you have your mask on? Let me see.
A mask mandate went into effect after the board meeting, although certain exemptions are still allowed.
But do you sympathize with parents who say, you know, their kids have mental health issues when they're wearing a mask, or they just hate it? What do you say to them?
But I think at the end of the day, you have to decide like what is more important, my comfort or mine and others' safety?
This is not political. This is a public health nightmare at this point. And we all have to do our part in order to do what's best for our country, not just for ourselves.
You feel caught in the crossfire?
Schools have been made a battleground. It's absolutely a distraction. There are so many things we should be working on, and yet we're spending time answering parents who, in some cases, want something that we're not able to.
I mean, they're absolutely right. It's amazing to me that the levels that they go just to make sure that you don't want your kid to wear a mask. And she points out something. I love how the parent of the special needs child, she points out something that a lot of people are missing. I'm like, the fact of the matter is that her child was born with 1 lung and complications because she's a special needs child, still wears her mask, no problem. How else can you turn around and say, how could you have a problem with that? Because again, these parents, and I'm going to go ahead and say it, these parents out here are something else. I'm like, how is it that you could sit there and you can, for lack of better words, say, oh, well, religious exemptions. Religious exemptions? Really? That's what we're using? Because, again, guys, this is the point I'm making about religious exemptions. There is nothing religious that prevents you from wearing a mask at all. In the same sense of, how in the world can you sit there and say, well, they can't breathe in the mask? Yes, they can. When I was going to the gym during the mask mandate, I was able to work out just fine with the mask on. So, for the simple fact of the matter, it is amazing to me the levels will go. And of course, the information they get, respiratory issues, acne, early child development. I'm like, if you're not, and I say this all the time, if you're not a medical professional or a doctor or a nurse or a healthcare person, please not speak from an area of authority. Because when we ask you where you got this from, and you're gonna say, I got this from the internet. Okay, that's not. The internet has a lot of reputable sources, but if you just say I got this off the internet, your credibility drops faster than Trump steak stock prices. That's all I'm saying. But again, I hope that every parent is actually taking hold of this, because like I said before, I have seen firsthand how easy it is for people's kids to pass COVID to one another. But even more so, that I've seen some parents, when they're told about a possible COVID scare, still treat it as if nothing happened. And that alone should tell you the mindset of a lot of people in this country. But if you don't believe it about the way they do mandates, and you think, oh, it's just masks. Oh no. Thanks to a good friend of mine, he actually found this video and I got it queued up. And I want to show people, it's not just, it's amazing the hesitancy that a lot of Americans will have to anything. And this was just about seatbelts back in the 80s.
It is a new seatbelt ordinance. If the town council gets its way, seatbelts will be mandatory for everybody riding in the front seat of a car through Richland.
I'll have to detour the town to get to Kalamazoo. They pass the seatbelt ordinance, I don't use a seatbelt.
I wouldn't wear my seatbelt. I get caught, I guess.
Florida Highway Patrol Lieutenant Chris Miller hears it all when it comes to seatbelts.
I hear it's uncomfortable. It wrinkles my clothes. It's not cool.
There's no freedom no more. You don't want to wear it? That's your choice. It is a new seatbelt ordinance. If the town council gets its way, seatbelts will be mandatory for everybody riding in the front seat of a car through Richland.
I'll have to detour the town to get to Kalamazoo. They pass the seatbelt ordinance, I don't use a seatbelt.
I wouldn't wear my seatbelt. I get caught, I guess.
Florida Highway Patrol Lieutenant Chris Miller hears it all when it comes to seatbelts.
I hear it's uncomfortable. It wrinkles my clothes. It's not cool.
There's no freedom no more. You don't want to wear it? That's your choice.
Sorry, I was muted. It's amazing. That was a seatbelt law back in 1986, when it was a 1986 seatbelt mandate. And you just see the same individuals have an issue with seatbelts. We're now fast forward to 2021. We're talking about mask mandates. I don't know what else I have to say this to you people who refuse to kind of join us. I mean, you keep on saying your freedoms are being entranced on. They're not, because if your freedoms were really being sacrificed or held against your will, like you say it's going to happen, there will be folks at your door right now injecting the vaccine into you forcefully. That would justify your freedoms being taken away from you. But the simple fact of the matter is that a whole bunch of you still out there are still saying I'm not getting vaccinated, and everybody's going okay and moving forward without you, shows that your freedoms are not being impacted. If anything, they're being allowed. But again, the consequences of your choices will haunt you, and not surprised about the lot of you. But moving forward, guys, I did want to get to this, because what's actually going on today, and actually I do mean today, is a rally in DC for the January 6th failed coup d'etat of white supremacists. They can call them rioters all they want to. It was a failed coup d'etat of white supremacists, and they're having a rally for them. I can't make this up.
Ahead of the planned Justice for J6 rally this Saturday, with security measures going into place all week around the Capitol, including extra security cameras and the installation of more protective fencing. The rally is being held to support the January 6th rioters, and police are taking no chances, making preparations to avoid a repeat of that scene this time around. Let's bring in NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Leanne Caldwell, who is on Capitol Hill already for us this morning, where these security preps are underway. Leanne, good morning. Let's start with what you're seeing on the ground outside the Capitol. I can see that fence behind you. Tell us anything else you're noticing.
Good morning, Savannah. That's right. Capitol Police are taking no chances this time. They've learned their lessons from January 6th and doing everything they can to prepare. You see this fence behind me. Last night at 8:30 p.m., workers started erecting this fence around the perimeter of the Capitol. As you can see, the roads are still open to traffic, and that is on purpose. The fence is just to protect the Capitol. And as you notice, there's now 3 layers of security. You have the cement barriers to make sure that the fence is knocked down, and also the pilings. Of course, those are for vehicular, make sure cars don't get through. And then in addition, you have brand new security cameras that have been put up. There's at least 3 around the Capitol, some very intense high security cameras. We're on the east front of the Capitol, which, as if you remember the images from January 6th, this is one of the main places that the rioters stormed the Capitol through those center steps and entered the Capitol building, Savannah.
And now, Leanne, so that's all these physical preparations and equipment. Let's talk more about kind of some of the planning here. I mean, there's been so much talk about an investigation of the failures in communication and planning that led up to January 6th. So talk to us about what's different this time. How are Capitol Hill police officers preparing? And have their leaders been in contact with the appropriate groups, with the White House, with the Pentagon on this?
Yeah, one of the biggest complaints after January 6th is the lack of communication, not only among leadership, but among rank and file members as well, between leadership, and they are trying to change that. Capitol Police are communicating much more with their rank and file. They've also held closed briefings with congressional leadership of both parties. And remember how it was a big controversy over when the National Guard was to be called on January 6th? Well, they have put in that preliminary request to the Department of Defense. Let's listen to Pentagon spokesman John Kirby on this.
We have received a request from Capitol Police for some assistance for this weekend's protests, scheduled protests. We're analyzing it, and if it can be validated and supported, we'll do that, and we'll look at the sourcing inside the department as to what's most appropriate.
So hopefully that request is not necessary on Saturday, but the precautions are in place just in case, Savannah.
And one of the things, of course, that we can't forget is that behind you is not just the Capitol, it's a lot of people's office. How are lawmakers on the Hill feeling about the rally? They won't be there because it's Saturday, but is it reminding them of the January 6th riot and what happened there?
Absolutely. That's the reason why all of these precautions are being taken into account, even though members of Congress won't be here. There's a lot of security for them as well. They've increased security at the airports on member travel days. And in addition, excuse the noise behind me, but in addition, there's supposed to be rallies in members' districts around the country. They are supposed to communicate with Capitol Police. And, we've done a lot of reporting on this over the last several months about how January 6th has really impacted Capitol Hill. And the New York Times this morning has a brand new feature on exactly that. And those scars have not yet gone away. And that's a big reason why they want to make sure that this place and the people inside are safe, Savannah.
All right, Leanne Caldwell, lots to watch for there and across the country, as we just saw.
I still find that amazing. I find that completely amazing. The reason why I find it amazing is because, again, this was a rally for white supremacists that failed a coup d'etat to stop an electoral college count vote, that were incited by a former president, and now there's a rally for them. In the words of Don King, only in America could you pull this off. And again, it's not just happening in D.C. as you saw by the journalist report. It is happening in various cities around the U.S., including my home state of Tennessee. And I'm kind of curious. I kind of want to do a quick search just to see if there was a rally here. But actually, let me just take a little quick look. Let me just make sure, because if there actually is, I'm going to be laughing. I am really going to be laughing. Let's see. Well, so far from what I've seen of it all, let me just see if I can pull up something very quickly. Just bear with me, guys. I'll
secure.
There are some sparse people. Let me just show you this. Let me show you this, guys. Let me just show you this very quickly, before we can move on. Okay, so these is actually the reports from ABC News. It looks like there are some counter protesters that are showing up. Yeah, that's great to see that sign. And of course, let's see. Well, they're mostly counter protesters, and some of them. Again, we're seeing more of a police response now, which I find interesting because again, guys, you got to understand that there's a big difference between what happened in January 6th, which feels like years ago, versus now, where you see immense security, National Guard, more federal officers on standpoint, and they are in riot gear. Now, this was not the response they got when Trump and company decided to go and raid the Capitol. So again, I'm just going to be curious to see how these actually turn out. It's just amazing to me that there is a rally for these so-called protesters when they should be getting shunned, shamed, and honestly embarrassed. Because what did they actually prove? They proved that yes, white supremacy is still around, that racism and bigotry are still around, and at the same time, it doesn't take much for one white person to incite others to do violence. Doesn't take much. Tale as old as time. But moving right along, I did want to go into the story as well. That of course I said this was going to happen, and I hate that I'm right. So aside from Texas putting in their abortion law, and the Supreme Court right now is not looking at it, although the Department of Justice is fighting it, Mississippi is actually entering their abortion law, saying a 15-week ban. And right now, it still has not an answer from the Supreme Court whether or not it's being challenged. Because again, this is basically from abortion providers. I'll read the article. "Quote unquote, abortion providers are urging the Supreme Court on Monday to reject Mississippi's 15-week prohibition on most abortions, saying a decision to uphold it would invite states to ban abortion entirely." So again, keep in mind, Texas's current abortion law is that at 6 weeks. And let's be honest, no woman knows they're pregnant by the 6th week. And now that Mississippi is introducing their 15-week ban, again, this is an attack on women. This is. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I have no problem being on record saying it, because it's out there on Facebook and YouTube for the world to see. I personally believe that no man should vote on a woman's rights, on a woman's reproductive rights. They don't vote on ours. They don't vote on ours. We shouldn't vote on theirs. At the same time, a woman's body is her choice. And I know that is a lot for the pro-lifers to understand. A woman's body is her choice and her business. I will always fall asleep sounding like a baby, regardless of what a woman decides to do with her body. Well, I just think, no. You're not, it's not your body. That's all it is. It's not your body. But yet now we have, because of extreme religious views and pro-lifers who have infiltrated state official, who has infiltrated state official positions, are moving this forward to sit there and say, we don't like the way you're doing it, so we're going to make our way a point of law that you have to follow. Because no one's thinking about the unborn baby. No. I hate when they do that. No one's thinking about the child inside. I said, yes, they are. Because the cold hard truth is, a woman that wants to have an abortion is the most responsible thing you can do. What would be really irresponsible is actually bringing that child to term and not being able to care for it, and then you'll call her an unfit mother. And then you'll have sympathy for the child, but you won't make sure the child gets what they need. So they stay in an orphanage until they're 18, and then they become an adult, and then they may not become a productive member of society. But you're worried about the bubble. We're all about the bubble. That's what you're worried about. And that tells me all the time, when it comes to pro-lifers, you guys are full of it. But again, with the Supreme Court leaning extremely conservative, this is a problem. Because they could turn around and reverse Roe versus Wade. It is possible. And that's scary for women. And this day and age, it's like, being a woman, and that's why I said, I sit there and I sympathize. Because men are being subjected the same way a woman is. Could you imagine? I told guys, could you imagine a woman told you that, hey, you can't do certain things that you were happy doing by yourself behind closed doors because you're basically wasting life? Would you be offended? They go, heck yeah, I'd be offended. I said, replace that with a woman. Again, a woman's body is her choice and her business. That's the way it should be left. But we'll follow that story as it goes along. Moving right along, I did want to get to this story as well. That I have been saying this as a possibility because, again, with nurses and doctors in the COVID situation, they are facing extreme things. One of those things being burnouts. There is another thing to remember, though, because keep in mind, guys, as there is a shortage of nurses and staff across the U.S. and possible areas of the world, there's also a new problem that's happening. Pay. Keep in mind, especially the rural hospitals that are actually losing staff because traveling nurses make so much more. Quote unquote, nurses at rural hospitals are paid an average of $70,000 a year, or just over $1,200 a week, according to ZipRecruiter. But if you're a traveling nurses being offering travel positions are given a $5,044 a week salary, which means that if you're traveling nurses, you can make anywhere between $5,800 and $5,900 a week, especially if you do have several. And of course, in this case, one of the healthcare hiring sites, Vivian, lists several travel nurse assignments that pay up to $9,562 a week. Now, that's kind of saying a lot, isn't it? That yes, another reason why there may be a shortage of nurses is because they're not being paid enough at these hospitals, but traveling nurses make quite the amount. Of reason being because they travel and they have to go to different areas, and which means more expenses, which means more money, more incentive. So let's point this out. Say, for instance, you're working in Nashville. Let's say you're working at St. Thomas. You're working at St. Thomas and you're making $1,200 a week. So again, $1,200, you're making over $1,200, okay? You're a traveling nurse. Let's just take the highest one. A traveling nurse can make anywhere from $5,000 to $9,000 a week. I'm just saying. You keep in mind, guys, traveling nurses, like doctors, are being burned out, and some of them are actually leaving the profession for burnout. But a lot of these nurses are actually going ahead and taking this because the simple fact of the matter is it's more money. And I've been saying this. I have been saying this. When it comes down to jobs, whoever pays the most will get the best people. And again, if you are a traveling nurse, you're making a nice little compensation. Yes, you're putting your life at risk because you're going to multiple areas, especially in the COVID-19 situation, but your compensation is higher. But again, when it comes to these people out here, when they think about jobs and wages, I said, this is what's going to happen. I said, this is what happens when you believe in the invisible hand of the free market. There is no invisible hand. Because trickle down doesn't work. Whenever you spend on a dollar, the way the dollar always goes from down to up, from down to all the way up. If you put a hand, I always say it best, if you put a dollar in the hand of the lowest person on the totem pole, that lowest person on the totem pole will be spending something, and it goes up and up and up and up until it goes back to the top of the pole. Money doesn't trickle down, it travels up. And the thing about it is, trickle down economics don't work. Because you can see people saying, well, it's going to trickle down. It doesn't. Because why? If you give a dollar or a lump sum of money to a rich investor, to a rich person, or a CEO, or the top of a company, it never trickles down. They pay executives who hoard it. They pay bonuses who hoard it. It never goes down to lower departments. So what's going to wind up happening is, because those lower departments, which are under this, keep in mind, using the totem pole, if the lower part of the totem pole becomes eroded and constructed and becomes breaking apart, what do you think happens to the top? The whole thing crashes. We've seen it once before. So again, why am I saying this about traveling nurses? Because this could spell doom for some hospitals if some nurses who see that traveling nurses make a lot more decide to become a traveling nurse. Then that hospital suffers. And when the hospital suffers, the people that it supports in that community suffers as well. Raise the pay all across the board just seems like to be the easiest answer to me. But moving right along, guys, I did want to cover these last two stories before we get to our feel good segment. I wanted to cover this one because I did this one about a few weeks ago, where again, this is the father of the 7-year-old Michigan girl whose hair was cut by the teacher. for no reason. Well, he is now filing a $1 million lawsuit against the school district, the librarian who cut the girl's hair, and a teacher's assistant. Quote unquote, in the lawsuit filed Tuesday in federal court in Grand Rapids against Mount Pleasant Public Schools, Jimmy Hoffmeyer alleges his biracial daughter's constitutional rights were violated. He is also suing for racial discrimination, ethnic intimidation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and assault and battery. And this goes back to the stories. Hoffman, who is black, said in March that his daughter Junie arrived home from Garinair Elementary in Mount Pleasant, Michigan, with much of the hair on her one side of her head cut. Journey said that a classmate used scissors to cut her hair on a school bus, and so the librarian decided to finish the job. So again, I just thought it was interesting to where, number one, as a educator, you don't touch my child's hair. If there's an issue with my child's hair, you better call the parents and be like, hey, y'all want to come and take her because we're not doing anything. That's only the right thing to do. You don't cut a child's hair and try to even it out because you're afraid you're going to get bullied. No, you call the parents and allow the parents to make their own decision. So I don't blame him at all for turning around and suing the school because the school took it out of his hands to be a parent. I can't knock him from that, and I hope he wins. The other story I got, guys, before we get to our feel-good segment, is just that this story, and keep in mind, this is good. Basically, I said a while back, New York will be requiring proof of vaccinations at most restaurants and places. Well, it seems a host at a popular New York City restaurant was assaulted by 3 women from Texas when she asked for proof they had been vaccinated against COVID-19. 3 women punched the host at Carmine's Upper on the West Side repeatedly and broke her necklace Thursday afternoon after she asked for proof of vaccination, which is required because, again, New York City Mayor de Blasio did put this in place. But again, this is the world we're living in, guys, to where, for the simple fact of the matter is, yes, in New York, they are requesting vaccination, proof of vaccination. And if you don't have it, you won't be served. It's the same laws and rights that you have that these restaurants have the right to refuse service on. It's just the way it is. You cannot get mad about it. If you want to go to New York, yes, you're going to provide proof of vaccination. But there's no need to assault somebody that's doing their own job. So I'm glad that they got arrested on that, because they should be. Because again, that's just a person just enforcing the rules in New York City. You don't like it? Go back to where there's no vaccination where you live. But I have been saying this. I said this at the beginning of the podcast. I'll say it as we get close to the end. You don't want to get vaccinated? Fine. The world will move on without you. I have been saying that. The world is moving on. They're getting vaccinated. They're putting in places things to lower or limit or reduce the risk of COVID infection. The world is moving forward. And if you don't want to move forward, that's fine. But you can't get mad when the world's not going to accommodate you for your choices. That's called consequences. You don't like the consequences? Make a choice. Well, that's forcing me against my rights. No, it's not. Forcing you against your rights would mean that somebody's at your door right now to inject a vaccine against your will. That's against your rights. You simply getting mad because you can't go into a certain restaurant because you don't have the vaccination card to prove that you're vaccinated is just the fact of the matter is that restaurant's owner is refusing the right to deny service to anybody that fits a certain condition. You're no different than the baker who didn't want to bake a cake for a gay couple and wound up later his doors were closed. Business 101, folks. But anyway, moving right along, I did want to go ahead and get to our feel-good segment like I usually do on How the Frack We Got Here. We do cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom. Sometimes make you lose your faith in humanity, but hey, it's the weekend. I know it's raining where I am here in Tennessee. Hopefully it's not where you guys are. It's nice and sunny until winter is coming. Yay, because summer needs to die a horrible death. I am not a summer person. I love the winter. But again, I do want to do these 3 stories to give us a little bit of hope, a little bit of, good cheer on the way out. In this one, this first clip I got is basically a marriage proposal. And I gotta love how this guy did it because this was actually done in an opera and he was not at a loss for words. and mazel tov to the happy couple, because again, you gotta love the fact he said in behalf of your friends and family, and most importantly, mom and dad, will you marry me? And of course, he's an opera, so he wasn't about to sing the whole thing in monotone. But again, kudos to the happy couple, and like I said, may they have a long marriage. And I'm sorry, it's kind of been a while since I've done the whole thing. Elder's kid, you kind of get the whole marriage thing memorized in your head. Anyway, moving right along, guys, I did want to cover this story where I keep on saying, guys, random acts of kindness is what truly the world needs, and what this couple has done to honor a loved one is still one of those things I keep saying. Random acts of kindness is what's going to save this world. Check it out.
Remember those troubling images during the early part of the pandemic with hundreds of cars lined up at food banks in cities across the country as the pandemic exposed the ugly reality of food insecurity for so many families. Well, that need hasn't gone away, but neither has the generosity of communities coming together to help feed their neighbors. And in New York City, one grassroots organization helped spark a movement of community fridges filled daily with free food to help fight hunger at the neighborhood level. It started with a single fridge on a Brooklyn sidewalk, but now there are hundreds across New York and in cities around the country. And our Lindsay Davis takes a look in tonight's America Strong.
Nothing in the freezer, right?
No, nothing. May 18th is always a difficult day for Selma Raven. 8 years ago, her 21-year-old son, Michael, a passionate health food advocate known for his "no one should go hungry" mantra, passed away. Today, Selma finds herself honoring his memory by doing what he loved most, feeding their neighbors in the Bronx.
He was a catalyst for this, but what's running it now is the neighborhood, the people, and really the whole community behind it.
Selma, along with her partner Sarah, started what they believe was the first community fridge in the Bronx just as the pandemic began. Every day for the past year and a half, they spend time stocking a curbside fridge full of fruits, vegetables, sandwiches, and other essentials, all free of charge, thanks to local donations.
It's people in the neighborhood, it's pantries nearby, it's larger organizations once in a while saying, hey, we've got some extra food. We've gotten the farm to come on, and now they're doing drops once a week, bringing large quantities of food from organic farms upstate.
It's all about feeding the need, and the need is great. Just as quickly as the food is delivered, it seems to disappear. Selma and Sarah estimate their fridge alone is feeding 220 people a day, with neighbors volunteering to help keep the pantry stocked around the clock and facilitate donations. In Brooklyn, Beatriz Perez and the taxi cab service she works for are running an operation of their own.
It's just a plain office, and then we set up the tables.
Her boss noticed community fridges popping up on social media. She says their Phoenix fridge is helping more than 1,000 local families get meals weekly.
We lost a lot of drivers. They passed away because of COVID. So we saw the need for our tenants. It's given us a different meaning of life. We've become very family-based with many people who come for food.
Bronx-based artist Laura Alvarez has taken note of that new meaning of life, all because of Selma's friendly fridge.
I think I've seen the change in the culture. Like before, you didn't matter if 2 apples will go to waste in your place, but now instead of letting go to waste, you bring them to the fridge, you leave them there, and maybe there's something that you might want to get.
Laura has painted designs on 12 different fridges now, illustrating the message behind their mission.
Take what you need, leave some for others. Coge lo que necesites, deja algo para los demás. That was something that we decided to write on the shed and on the fridge, because when we started, it was basically free food, and that was creating some issues on people coming and just taking the whole fridge. So we decided to word it a little different, and that way it's been working pretty well.
The concept has worked so well that locally sourced community fridges have spread throughout New York City amid the pandemic, thanks in large part to In Our Hearts NYC, a grassroots organization that helps connect fridges and food suppliers with hosts through social media. The group has had a part in setting up fridges outside bodegas and apartment buildings in every borough and has now expanded their reach to help other communities battling food insecurity. Chicago, Nashville, Los Angeles, and Miami, just to name a few. And the need continues to grow.
Our estimates are more than 60 million Americans reached out and got support from the charitable food sector in this country during the pandemic. We continue to see elevated levels, and the challenges we faced were just the sheer demand, the levels of need out there.
There are certain fridges where as soon as we drop off food, within an hour, it's empty. They'll see our cars pull up and then immediately grab everything.
So many people are displaced. I just believe that we as a community can help each other, and we have all the power to.
This is a Band-Aid to a very big problem within the country. There's a real systemic issue in this. Living in this country of America, we have an abundance of resources, and everyone should have access to food no matter what their situation is.
And while many fridges are finding creative ways to keep their help-yourself pantries stocked, most lack the resources to truly solve food insecurity in their neighborhoods.
We've never received any funding. We sit for hours applying for grants. This is a genuine interest. Even though you see this food now, it'll be gone in about 30 minutes. And fridges all over. We need trucks, we need transportation. We need agencies understanding that there is a real need. Why do we need to go through all these red tape to get funding?
But Selma and Sarah say they'll keep on pushing to try to combat food insecurity at the neighborhood level, continuing Michael's mission with each meal.
I think he would be very proud of us. He was a big believer in, together we can really make a big difference. Neighbors helping neighbors.
And that's the truth. I've been saying this, guys, random acts of kindness are actually what's going to save us. And the fact that there's such a movement behind it tells you everything that you want to know. So definitely do support those out there to wherever you may find food drives, things of that nature. I know in Tennessee it's usually the Second Harvest, which is actually one of the bigger ones out here. But if you devote money or time or food, then hey, it's always accepted. That being said, guys, the last story that we got, guys, is about traveling nurses. And just want to show a little bit of what they do as far as not only just traveling from one place to another, but also how they handle family life as well.
What's up?
I've worked most days every week I've been here. It's exhausting. There are no more beds in the rest of the hospital, so there's not really anywhere for patients to move. In short, it's definitely worse here than it was last time. 6 months ago, when we last talked, I really thought things were going in a different direction.
Normal temperature. Please proceed.
I did not for a second think I would be here again right now.
Let me see your skills.
My faith keeps me grounded.
Go, go, go.
My family keeps me grounded.
Hi, how are you?
Travel nurses are heroes. You rise to the occasion when it matters most, and that's what we are. That's what travel nurses are. That's what we do.
But can I travel too?
You get to come and visit. When I'm leaving out again, it's always, well, when will you be back? When should we expect you, kind of thing. See you later. You can tell by, how tight the hugs are. Love you. For traveling nurses, I don't get a chance to be with my family. I don't get a chance to hug my kids or to kiss my husband every day of the week. And so it's a challenge and it's a sacrifice that not everybody is willing to make. It's just that I've been chosen to make it. My name is Decoya Billy. I am a travel nurse.
I'm Bridget Harrigan. I'm 28 years old and I am a travel nurse. You miss out on family things, birthdays, and I've missed Christmas before. There are definitely sacrifices.
New York's first case of coronavirus affected a 39-year-old healthcare worker who had just
World Health Organization now declaring a global pandemic.
I knew I had to go. There was no question about it. They assigned me to Elmhurst Hospital in Queens, New York. The epicenter of the epicenter.
Doctors on the front lines warning hospitals are increasingly overwhelmed.
My first assignment was here in New York. It was scary. You think about the lives lost and, the families that were hurting. You think about your own family. I have Jalen. I have Elijah. And then I have Carrington. He's the oldest of the twins. She wants to say hi. And then Kinsley is the youngest, and she's the only girl. I figured, okay, this is serious. It's not going anywhere. I still need to help provide for my family. The twins were about 3 months old. I was pumping because they were premature. My husband, he told me, as long as I have milk, then I am good to go.
When we explained it to the children, we just basically said that mom has a work assignment. She'll be gone for a little bit, but she'll be back.
This is my home for the next month or so. It's got everything I really need.
I was only supposed to be there for 4 weeks, and then I ended up extending because it was continuing to get worse.
Not too bad, the mask marks today.
I was about 2 weeks into my assignment. I started to feel badly.
I have a fever now, 100.7.
Definitely convinced that I have COVID, because what else could it be?
Oh, there we go. I got it.
Rise and shine. Today is day 12 of 20-something. I've lost count. And I'm tired. But you push on another day to help those in need.
Every time she returns home, I do find myself having a sigh of relief inside, knowing that she's safe.
Getting to spend that quality time with my family definitely makes it harder to leave.
Six months ago, when we last talked, I took an assignment in Guam, which was amazing, and I was there until the end of May. Came back home to Texas, and then the pandemic revved up again for the next surge, and now I'm in the Woodlands, Texas. It is insane here. What I've seen is that every single patient, aside from one that's come through the ICU in the last 4 to 5 weeks, has been unvaccinated. I'm actually kind of renewed in my sense of being a nurse. I'm feeling again what I used to always feel about being in the right place and doing the right thing.
Sun's out, it's beautiful out, it's time to get ready.
The CDC says that you're to isolate for 10 days. We see on average about 350 patients a day.
Let's confirm your name and date of birth, please.
6 months ago, patients are rushing in to get tested because of the unknown. Now patients are rushing in to get tested because it's a necessity. The babies were crawling. They're now full on running, climbing. Yay! Resilience is major for travel nurses. It's worth it. It's absolutely worth it to be a travel nurse.
I've been absolutely amazed by the people I've met. All of these other nurses are my heroes. I don't believe that we could get through this at all without them.
And I just thought that was pretty cool to show. Just because that is the life of a travel nurse. I have always said it best. The best thing to a doctor is a nurse, because the nurse tells the doctor what to do. That being said, guys, thank you for watching. That's going to do it for our podcast. I do thank everybody that watched, that liked, to let people know I was live. I certainly appreciate it. Before I do get out of here, I do got to do some shameless plugging. I usually always start with my buddy first, Big VZA Dot, which you can find him, Avon Westfield, on Facebook, or Big VZA Dot on socials, who has a couple of podcasts coming up. One of them being Smoking Trailer Sundays, in which he shows trailers of movies and video games you might find interesting, because I know I do, every Sunday from 6:30 to 9. He also has the RAF, which is like America's Funniest Home Videos, except done by WorldStar, only for the grown and intended, every Tuesday from 6:30 to 9 p.m. as well. He also has another video game channel called Making Plays, which goes live on his Facebook. If you want to know when, definitely go to his Facebook at A7A. I cannot believe I messed that up. A.Witherspoon on Facebook, or Big Busy on socials. Definitely check him out. As for yours truly, guys, the link at the bottom, if you copy and paste that into your browser, will take you to my link tree for all of my YouTube and Facebook groups, for all of my podcasts. How the Frack We Got Here, Get Bit, and of course, the Off Limits podcast. Yes, I'm going to do an Off Limits podcast a little bit later today, guys. I know it has been a while since I've done Off Limits. Hey, life and things get in the way. So we will be back on track with that a little bit later on this Saturday. So definitely we'll be on the lookout for that. Also with that being said, again, my IG handle, which is actually right here, BlackBox447, definitely follow that. And sometimes I like to post movie reviews, video game reviews, and sometimes inspirational stuff when it hits me in fitness, because I'm trying to work on being better in shape. Because, you know, as I'm approaching 40, I do not want to be these 40-year-olds that are, you know, on oxygen tanks, we're using canes and things of that nature. I'm trying to get myself in better shape. So I know if you do see me working out, just, you know, inspire me, help me out a little bit, because today's cheat day and I'm trying not to go overboard. So, also with that being said, guys, again, COVID-19 is real. I shouldn't have to say this, but we're going to say it anyway. Please wear a mask. Please wear gloves. If you feel the littlest bit of sick, try to stay at home. I know, because, again, if you've heard my sniffling and coughing, I have a little bit of a cold myself. I'm trying to stay at home because, again, I'm not trying to pass it along to anybody. But, again, guys, we need to be more preventative and more careful, because in this day and age, we have seen a lot of people pass to COVID. Like I said, a good friend of mine just unfortunately had a loss in their family due to COVID. So I can tell you that it's real. Please, if you haven't been vaccinated, please get vaccinated. Or like I said before, definitely take care of yourself. Only go to the hospital unless you have extreme emergencies, because right now all hospitals are full. And trust me, from experience, I have known this. It is harder, because that's the reason why we're trying to get people to get vaccinated and keep out of this, because we're trying to lower the hospital count down, because a lot of people who are waiting on surgeries, who are waiting on operations, are not able to get in because all the hospital beds are being taken by COVID patients. So let's be mindful and think of others, and we will definitely get past this, but we have to start doing that. Aside from that, guys, the last thing I'll say about How the Frack We Got Here, it's all about staying informed. We're not trying to change minds. We're not trying to persuade people. We are simply just trying to give you all the information that you can have and make up your mind for yourself. We do a lot better as a society once we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of history and try to move forward with things what we should have done a long time ago. Like elect our first Madam Vice President, who is black. Still hoping for Michelle Obama in 2024. But with that being said, guys, thank you all for watching. If you're watching on playback, please comment if it's live. I still want to know you guys' opinions about everything that we've said and covered. And also, if there's things out there that you want us to look into, or just things that you just questions about, I will definitely do the journalistic footwork for you. Reach out to me on How the Frack We Got Here on Facebook or on YouTube, and we'll go from there. So, aside from that, guys, take care of yourselves and each other, and we will get through this. Have a good weekend, guys. Thanks for watching. Peace.